Hi, this is Karen with Karen's Cards and More, and I'm back with you today to do another video. I'm so glad you joined me. I want to expand on a technique that I showed before. I did a video on using wax paper to do a resist technique, and we're going to do another variation of that today. So the products I'm going to be using features the Nature's Print stamp and die sets, and then we're going to do some wax paper embossed resist is what I'm going to call it, and we're just going to dive right into it and see about how to make this beautiful card. I love the richness of the color. Really easy to do, but yet you get a lot of wow for your time, and that's what I'm all about. So the card base is Night of Navy, and it's 11 by 4 1/4, scored at 5 1/2. And then I have a piece of gray granite that is 4 by 5 1/4. And then I have a piece of shimmer white that is, so this piece is 3 3/4 by 5 1/8. And you definitely want to do the shimmer white or the glossy paper. Do not use basic white, it won't work as well. So either do the shimmer white paper or the glossy paper, okay? And then the stamp set that I'm going to be using is this Nature's Print. Now in the new catalog, you can get the whole collection. That's the Nature's Prints, the Nature Print dies. It comes with designer series paper, the whole collection. It's a great value, and the Fern 3D embossing folder comes with that. Or you can buy the stamp set and the dies as a bundle, or you can buy them individually, depending on what you would use. I love this because in addition to the dies that we're going to use today, there's this beautiful wreath, and I can just envision all the wonderful cards that I can make using the wreath. Today we're going to use this for our sentiment, and we're going to use these sprigs. And we're also going to stamp something that we're going to cut out with that. So those are the dies that we're going to use today. And I'm just going to set these to the side. And then we're going to use this stamp here, this fern stamp. And we're going to use this Best Wishes and Happy Thoughts. So that's our stamps that we're going to be using today. I'm going to pull this stamp out so I have it ready. And we're going to go ahead and start with our emboss resist technique. So the first thing that I did is I took a piece of wax paper and I ran it through my stamp and cut and emboss. This is the 3D folder, and I ran it through with just wax paper in between. So what I get is this, and it doesn't look like much when you're just looking at this. But this is what I got. Now, you could do this next step with 2 pieces of the shimmer white and make 2 cards at once. But remember, this is embossed, the other side is debossed. So you would want to take that into consideration when you're planning your card. So I'm just going to put down a piece of copy paper. I'm going to bring in I have a iron mat that I'm going to put underneath here because we're going to do some ironing. And for your iron, you want to use no steam, and you want to use a high setting for it. I use cotton, but any high setting, no steam. Okay, so I'm just putting this down with the embossed side up. And I'm going to put my shimmer white paper right on top of there. Just like that. And then I'm going to put another piece of copy paper on top. And I'm going to come in with my iron. And I'm just going to press it down. Now, I don't want to iron back and forth, because that could mess up your design. So I'm just going to hold it down. Just like this. And it doesn't take long to do this. And I think you could probably, I did not try it, but I think you could probably use, if you have the Cricut heat press, easy, I can't remember what the exact name of it is, but I think you could definitely use that for this if you didn't want to use your iron, or maybe you have that and you don't have a craft iron. I have another iron that I use for clothes, but this is just my craft iron. And I don't even put water in it. So there's no chance of steaming. Okay, and that's probably real good. I'm gonna go ahead and turn my iron off. Okay. And we're just going to remove this. And you won't be able to see it right now, but the imprint of our embossing folder is the wax from the wax paper has made that design on our cardstock. And I'm just going to set that aside and let it cool for a moment. And while that's cooling, we're going to go ahead and do some stamping and some die cutting, and then we'll come back to that piece. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of basic white, and I'm using Night of Navy ink for this. And I want to stamp 2 of these ferns with the Night of Navy. And I'm going to be die cutting them, so I just want to ink this up. And I'm just going to stamp this down. Just like that. And I need 2, so I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm just going to turn it so I can make better use of my paper. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and clean this so I can use the same block for my greeting. I'm just going to pull that off and put my greeting on. And I'm going to be using this sentiment layer, and that won't fit on there. So I'm going to need to bring in another piece. Okay, just like that. And I'm going to go ahead and stamp this. Okay, and then we're ready to do some die cutting. So I'm going to bring in my mini Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine to do this. And I don't have a magnetic plate for this, so I'm going to use some low-tack tape to help keep my dies in place. And so I have a scrap of gray granite that I'm going to start with. And for this, you just use, and this is really easy because this gives you the little directions. So for die cutting, you use plates 1 and 2, and there's 2 plates, 1 plate. So I'm going to put my number 1 down, one of my number 2s. Here's my other number 2 that's going to go on top. So I'm just using a piece of gray granite. And I'm going to cut 2 of these little sprigs. And these don't have to be in a particular spot, so I'm not going to worry about taping these down. As long as I get 2 of them cut out of there. So I'm just going to lay that down and crank that through. And so we have our little sprigs that we're going to need. Just pop those out and set those aside. And if they ever stick on your plate, I just use my take your pick tool and loosen it up and then pull it right off. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to die cut my ferns and my greeting. So I'm going to put my first fern down, get the die cut. So I'm just going to get it in place where I want to cut. I'm going to get a piece of the low tack tape ready, just to tack it in place till I can run it through. I think that looks good. I'm just going to put my plate down and run this through. And then we're just going to do the same thing with the other fern. I'm just going to peel this off. And you just want to be a little gentle with it so you don't rip your cardstock, especially where your stamping was. And I'm just going to die cut my second one. Okay. And there we have our second fern. So we're ready to move on to our sentiment. And we're going to use this shape for that. So I'm just going to put this back on here. And we're just going to put that around there. Just like that. And we're just going to run this through. And there we have our greeting ready to go. Okay, so on to the next part. Just going to get this out of the way. Okay, so the next step is we're going to work on the piece that we did the wax paper embossing on. And so I'm just going to bring back in a piece of my copy paper. And we're going to use the Night of Navy ink. Now for this, I'm going to use a brayer. You could use a blending brush, but a blending brush is going to probably give you a lighter shade of the Night of Navy than what you can achieve with, at least that's what I found. And when you're using brayers, always remember that you want to do this like you would do a paintbrush. You don't want to just go in one spot because then you've only got ink on one spot. You want to go the length of the ink. So I'm just inking this up real well to get plenty of Night of Navy on there. And then I'm just going to just go over this. And you can start seeing the fern appear. Now this is with the foam brayer that Stampin' Up used to sell. And you can go over it as many times as we've discontinued these, I'm not sure why, but you can keep going over this to get the shade that you want. Or what I used, just to give you an alternative, if you have a Cricut and you have the Cricut tools, There's a Cricut brayer that's plastic instead of foam. And I found that if I used this, I got a much darker, richer shade of the Night of Navy. And I like that. And I'm just going to keep adding ink. Until I get it covered the way I want. And I like to move the brayer around so I'm not always going in the same place, so I can get the darkness that I want. And I even turn it and go back over it the other direction. That helps me get the richness that I want all over the piece. And it helps from having those lines show up from your brayer. Okay, I think that's just about where I want it. I want to go over this just a little more down here. I think that's good. Okay, now we're done with our ink. I'm just going to go ahead and wipe my hands just to make sure I have a tendency. And I'm going to bring in my other piece of copy paper and get rid of this one just because of the ink. And then you just want to take a paper towel and you want to rub over this because the ink that's on top of the wax paper is just sitting there. So you want to definitely go over this. And it almost gives it a denim look. I just want to make sure. I usually just keep turning my paper towel and doing this process until there's no ink coming off. Because if I don't, then I'm going to get ink all over my fingers, which is, for me, means transferring it all over my project. So I'm just going to keep repeating this process till there's no more ink coming off. And we did lay down a lot of ink, so depending on how much ink you put down, you might not have as much of this, what I would call cleanup. Okay, I think we're just about there. And this isn't going to give you a perfect look. That's not the look that we're going after for the emboss, using the embossing folder. But it is a different look and it's really pretty cool. Okay, I think we're there. So let's start putting this all together and we'll have a finished card. This is an old technique. You may have done it a long time ago. You may have never tried it, but definitely a fun technique to use. So the first thing I'm going to do is attach my piece that we inked onto my gray granite. Just like that. And I'm just going to use liquid glue. So I'm just going to put liquid glue on the back. I'm just going to line this up, try to get it even. And this is a thinner border. That looks good. And I'm just going to use my paper towel just in case there's additional ink, because I don't want to transfer it to my fingers. I'm just pressing that down to get the edges glued down. Then I'm going to just add glue on the back of the gray granite. We're going to attach it to our Night of Navy piece. And this is pretty much the standard border that we typically use. Just like that. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and fold it at this point, and then we'll be able to finish decorating. Just going to bring in my bone folder. Go over that fold. Okay, look at how beautiful that looks. I love that denim. It's kind of got a denim quality to it, and I just love that about it. Now, we're going to put on these sprigs and these ferns, and I'm just gluing them down, and then I'm going to put the sentiment on with some dimensionals. So I'm just going to bring in my components, and I always like to just test it out, just laying them down before I glue, so I can get an idea of the placement that I'm looking for. Just kind of something like that. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and glue these on. And again, I'm just using the liquid glue and just putting some little dots of glue on the back of our sprig here. I'm just going to kind of lay that down. And then I'm going to do the second one. Okay. Just kind of tilt this going the other direction. Press that down. And I'll come in with my ferns. And we're just going to do the same thing. We're just going to add some liquid glue on the back. I think I want to do something more like that. Again, putting some liquid glue on the back of this. Just pressing that down. Done with our liquid glue. And then I'm going to come in with my sentiment and some dimensionals. Just going to add these to the back here. We're going to put this down here like this. And then the only thing left to do is add our our pearls. I'm using the basic the Pearl Basic Jewels, and I'm using the large ones. And I put one right in the middle. And then I kind of did like an arc with the other two that I'm going to add, just to give it something different. Let's see, looks like right about there. And there we have it, a variation of the Wax Paper Resist using a 3D embossing folder, and you get a whole different look doing that than you do when you do just the Wax Paper Resist with crumpling it. And I'm going to bring in one from the other video. This background is just crumpling the wax paper, and this one is using an embossing folder. So I hope you like this technique. I hope you'll give it a try. Take a look at your 3D embossing folders and see what you have that might work for this. I will put the card recipe, the instructions, the card dimensions, all that will be on my blog, karenscardsandmore.com. Check out my Facebook group, my Facebook page. Give me a thumbs up or a comment if you like the video. Hit the subscribe button and you'll be notified every time I do a video. If you like the products and would like to order those, you can also do that at my blog. And I will be back with you to craft again soon.